Krishna Parabrahmane Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Today I would like to discuss the unity of Dharma in detail after the prayer. Namah Sarvatmane Deva Namo Vagatmane Hari Yodadhara Karena Sau Kushachirariyat Sada. Khajuraho's temple complex contains Vishnu and Shiva temples side by side with Jain temples. Hindu and Jain temples coexist at another site too. One of the first mosques built within India's borders, the province of Islam mosque, repurposed fragments of roughly 30 demolished Hindu and Jain temples. The two religions seem to have flourished together and suffered together. The 20th century's most influential Hindu, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, derived a doctrine of ahimsa that owed more to Jain teachers than to the Gita's Krishna. The 21st century's most influential Hindu so far, Narendra Modi, governs with the support of only one Indian religious minority, the Jains. The two religions have cohabited India for thousands of years, yet the historical record turns up only a few half speculative incidents of violence. Their theologians have argued back and forth for the centuries since Jains do not revere the Vedas and Hindus do not revere the Tirthankaras. The two religions are mutually indifferent to each other's central scriptures and sacred figures. Relatively trivial differences divided Europe's Catholic and Protestants or Islam's Sunnis and Shiites. Yet where is the Hindu-Jain equivalent of Europe's 30 years war? Hindu-Jain relations are not only example of India's religious mystery. The Mughal tyrant Aurangzeb beheaded Guru Tej Bahadur after the Sikh Guru intervened on behalf of Kashmir's persecuted Hindu Pandits. The Granth Sahib rejects Vedic rites, downgrades Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, and forbids the sculpting of murtis, and yet insists on reverence for Hindus. Infinitely invaluable is that Vaishnava, says Nanak, who has renounced corruption. When the Sikhs rose to power, the Khalsa army marched under flags featuring images of the goddess Durga, Hanuman and Kartikeya. A charming frieze dated to the 1st century CE shows that baby Buddha getting bathed by Indra and Brahma. Nalanda, which historians often call a Buddhist center of learning, did not resemble a monotheistic seminary or madrasa. Some excavated architecture matches the five-fold plan of Vishnu temple, expressing a deeper unity. Chinese travelers describe both Buddhists and Hindus studying at Nalanda. As one would expect, the 26th chapter of Dhammapada contains the Buddha's glowing description of the ideal Brahmin. Nalanda's demolition happened at the hands of neither a Hindu king nor a Jain one. Indian religious history must be cordoned off from the religious history of the larger monotheistic religions. Paradigms borrowed from elsewhere do not map onto ancient India's religious landscape. If the monotheistic paradigm were extended to India, Hinduism would equal Judaism, Buddhism would equal Christianity, and so on. Even a cursory glance at history causes the metaphor to break down. In India, we encounter a different civilizational psychology, one that unites the religions that share a birthplace. It even has a name, Dharma. Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism rejected the Vedas and denied the authority of the Vedas and Brahmins. Yet Krishna himself understood their perspective. The Gita's second chapter, containing a skeptical portrait of priests addicted to the forms of rituals, interested only in their own enrichment. One of the Gita's most striking images concerns the transcendence of the Vedas. Krishna says explicitly that enlightenment does not need the Vedas any more than a man needs a well. More water is crashing in from all sides. Elsewhere, Krishna explains that various forms and modes of worship flowed to the same ultimate recipient. Both the mother and the child faiths maintained respect for each other. An echo, perhaps, of the strong mother child bonds in Indian families. The Buddha insisted on the sanctity of the Brahmin, and the Brahmins returned the favour, including him among Vishnu's Dasavataras, 10 incarnations. More than mutual ahimsa unites the dharma's religions. The story they tell about life and death is identical. At this point, after global conquest by two non-theistic faiths, billions of people believe a different story in which people are born once, die once, and are judged in part on their belief or unbelief in a credo. The Dharma insists otherwise. Its story in India's ancient and ongoing transcendent descent. The story was mapped out in recognizable form in the earliest Upanishads. There we first find the part line that threads India's religions like pearls on a string. We die and we are reborn many times. Each birth is determined by past karma, prarabdha karma, the ethical charge of our actions in previous lives. We pass through these bodies to transfigure ourselves over time. A dharma brought from India transfigured the people, and the stones of Angkor Wat. Time passed and the kings took up Buddhism. More time passed and the jungle instituted its vines and roots, potting and toppling the great stones. That Indian vision of the universe stayed imprinted on Khmer soil, a monument to the twin quickenings of Dharma, Hindu and Buddhist. Notice that sacrifice gods are rituals, founders, forward builders, gurus or bodhisattvas figure nowhere in that simple, bare bones story. Sikhism inherited the ancient Hindu technique of japa, the repetition of a sound or name. Two-thirds of modern Jains believe in the purifying power of the Ganges. Buddhism's luminous formula Om Mani Padme Hum contains at its origin the sacred syllable that Hindus place at the origin of being itself. Yet none of these elements is necessary or indispensable or worth wearing over. None is the sole defining property of any other religion. In the religions of transcendent distance, no proper noun or credo matters. Repetition of a statement, insistence on a specific divine name, membership in a group. None of these is litmus test of spiritual worthiness checked like a passport at the gate of heaven. This distinction is the crucial one because it distinguishes at an ethical level the Dharma's religions from Near Eastern monotheisms. By uncoupling belief and karma, India refused to treat acceptance of a doctrine as an intrinsic moral good. Merely believing in the idea of karma does not accrue good karma. In the monotheistic religions that dominate the rest of the world, believing in one God and believing in a specific founder's special status or ethical acts. In the Quran, lack of belief is a sin grave enough to merit eternal suffering. As a 33rd surah makes clear, surely God has cursed the disbelievers. God has cursed the disbelievers and has prepared for them a flaming fire wherein they will abide forever. Dante places virtuous pagans in his Inferno not because they did anything wrong, but because they were born before Christ. Their virtue cannot save them. Angkor Wat's temple complex is the largest in the world. Built by Hindu kings, a mirror of Hindu cosmogony that centers on Mount Meru. Angkor Wat is a universe within the universe, self-contained, a clearing in the wilderness. A dharma brought from India transfigured the people and the stones of that place. Time passed, and the kings took up Buddhism. Bas reliefs of Puranic tales and Apsaras oversaw. With sublime serenity, different prayers sweetened with the same incense. More time passed, and the jungle insinuated its vines and roots, parting and toppling the great stones. That Indian vision of the universe stayed imprinted on Khmer soil, a monument to the twin quickenings of Dharma, Hindu and Buddhist. Among religions of the Dharma, conflict continues to have a tough time taking hold in spite of political efforts to stoke it. North American diasporic Sikhs retain an anachronistic fondness for the Khalistan movement, defacing the occasional Gandhi statue or Hindu temple in its name, but in India the monument has lost purchase. 1984's anti-Sikh riots, though at times described as Hindu on Sikh violence, was a specific political party's retaliation for Indira Gandhi's assassination. Today, as American funded proselytization targets Punjabi's Sikh population, India's largest Hindu organization has arranged the return of Christianized Sikhs, not to Hinduism but to Sikhism. Indian Buddhism's newest sect, Narayana, openly demolishes India's 4.5% Brahmin minority, and the Hindus, more generally, founded less than 100 years ago by a socio-political uncertain. Jains, on average, one of India's wealthiest and most influential groups, refrain from interreligious conflict altogether, partly from their philosophy of ahimsa, partly from their small numbers. They seem to understand that the pilot fish's destiny matches the shark's. If Khajuraho is a proof of Dharma's essential unity, Angkor Wat is proof that Dharma can travel beyond India's borders. The greatest monument of Christianity arose in Rome, far from Nazareth. The Suleiman Mosque was built in Ottoman Istanbul, far from Mecca. The contemporary Indian diaspora, possessing numbers, wealth, and influence, has an opportunity rare in any group's history. The only comparable phenomenon might be the Jewish emancipation in 19th century Europe that led to everything from Kafka's stories to Freud and quantum physics. That explosion of thought and creativity should be the diasporic Dharma's model and goal, not just the domination of higher paying professions and the ascent of corporate hierarchies. By discovering its unity across faiths and by uniting resources and creativity with Indian co-religionists, this diaspora stands on the verge of global dharmic renaissance. The outsized influence of American culture globally means that work done overseas may flow back and influence the dharmas religions in their homeland. Architecture is only one possible expression. The monuments can be built in literature, music, sculpture, and film. The colorful spectacles of Indian American culture, dancing and matchmaking, and groaning about our parents, as the secular West wants us to portray ourselves, is superficiality transcends noise. The power that conjured Angkor Wat out to the jungle lies in Dharma. The story that has set Indian religious history as a thing apart, the story involving reincarnation and karma that persists worldwide in spite of widespread indoctrination to the contrary lies in Dharma. Here in the West, on long converted soil, and in India, where proselytization continues, the Dharma has a chance to flower anew. Every act of reconnection with the Dharma is an act of defiance against the historical forces that have tried to extinguish it. And the present day political scenario and religious forces that continue to do so. To learn Devanagari or Gurumukhi, to study the scriptures and sculptures that define and distinguish our ancestors, to assert the transcendent descent with pride and creativity and a sense that the future belongs to us. This is a task ahead for coming generations, both in India and outside it. All that is needed is the will. India has given birth to four major world religions, namely Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Might seem like a red flag, signaling the country to be an obvious hub of historical, present, and future faith based violence and conflict. The reality, however, is very different. Hinduism, India's oldest religion, is commonly referred to by Hindus as Sanatana Dharma, a term denoting India's various philosophical structures that guide a person towards spiritual progress and attainment of the ultimate truth in harmony with a particular time, place, and circumstance. This truth, as described in the Vedas, is one but spoken of in various ways by a wise. As such, Dharma is inherently pluralistic and has always been open to dialogical discourse as a way of expressing different perspectives and ideas on spiritual reality. Hence, India has given birth to a religious and cultural syncretism that embodies the ability for traditions to coexist and exhibit a myriad of commonalities even amidst their differences. Though Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism have been categorized and conveyed as distinct and separate religions because they are ultimately schools of thought that came from India, They are also considered to be a part of the country's wider tradition of Sanatana Dharma. Both Jainism and Buddhism emerged around the same time and both rejected Hinduism's primary scriptures during a time when the ritualism of the Vedas was being emphasized more than the actual spiritual teachings. The rituals were supposed to have been based on. Sikhism, on the other hand, was founded much later during a period of religious and social reform in India, led by saints who emphasized devotion to God, and Jainism before them criticized the over ritualization of religion. Not only did Hinduism's burgeoning religions to grow and prosper in their own rights, such a culture allowed for a healthy atmosphere of interfaith discourse that has actually been essential to keeping dharmic values alive throughout the centuries. And because of so many, these values are ultimately the same among the four faiths. Hindus, Jains, and Buddhists and Sikhs have much in common when it comes to the fundamental aspects of their philosophies and practices. Perhaps the most fundamental and overarching philosophical concepts that characterize and provide a window into the dharmic traditions, plurality of viewpoints are karma, samsara, and samiksha. Karma, samsara, and moksha. According to the Hindu thought, every being in this world is eternal and spiritual information in nature, but lacking proper knowledge is stuck in a cycle of reincarnation called samsara. Karma, the idea that every thought and action has a corresponding reaction, is the ethical framework that determines the kinds of bodies, beings of life they lead from one lifetime. The next, the beings experience the results of their karma until they have made enough spiritual growth to attain moksha or liberation from samsara. The dharmic traditions, specifically Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, share much in regards to symbols. The Ashtamangala or 8 rains of auspiciousness are traditional. They are the pair of golden fishes. The pair of golden fishes, representing a state of fearlessness required of all sentient beings to keep from drowning in the seemingly endless whirlpool of samsara. The parasol, representing the protection of all beings from negative forces. The treasure vase, it represents the unlimited potency of dharmic teachings along with the unlimited blessings such teachings bestow, including wealth, prosperity, health, and longevity, wisdom, and liberation. The conch, representing deep, powerful, and penetrating sound of Dharma, which awakens being from the slumber of ignorance, encouraging from them to speak the ultimate truth. The wheel of Dharma, representing the teachings of Dharma and how those teachings are universally accepting and complete without beginning or end. Shri Akantaya Kalyana Nidhe Nidhe Sri Venkatavasa Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangala Sarampada Madacharya Purogamayi Sarvaisha Purvai Racharya Satkutaya Stu Mangalam.